Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Collector's Thoughts. This is episode 4, and today we're discussing what is happening with Warner Brothers and the DC universe. We heard some very disappointing news about massive layoffs going on throughout all branches of Warner Brothers. But today we're going to talk about the DC portion of it. So you want to start it off, bud?
Well, as DC, a big Batman fan first above everything else, and obviously Superman. And it was not shocking to me, like some people, like to you, it was shocking, but it wasn't shocking to me because this has been, we've read it throughout the last few years that something like this could be potentially coming, especially after AT&T joined into the mix. Me personally, I don't have much good things to say about AT&T, but I'm not going to put it solely on them because that would be unfair. Some of it's deserved, some of it not. But yeah, it was. I really feel bad for the people that lost their jobs. I mean, that's 600 to 800 people, potentially more, could lose their jobs. It's, as a DC fan, it's pretty dark right now. Hopefully, they're just restructuring the company, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. It's always sad when you hear these massive layoffs like that. And the thing is, honestly, one of the things that kind of would scare me personally is with the direction that comic books seem to be going towards that digital future and stuff. How many of these people are going to find other jobs? You know what I mean? Do those positions even exist anymore? You know, it's one of those things. Like, I hope the best for these people. I hope they can find work. I'm sure they will. You know, a lot of creative, talented people. But it does become quite nerve-wracking when you start to see how the future is becoming very digital heavy, and then you wonder what is going to happen to some of these jobs. Are they going to phase out completely, or what?
I've been hearing that they cut another 20 to 25% from the on the comic book side. So, I mean, I guess it depends what day you read. Since the news broke on the 10th, it depends what day you read. Like, I mean, we both took notes. It's just, it makes your head spin. Like, some of the stuff that you're reading. I mean, I guess we can start with DC Direct, DC Collectibles, right? I mean, when you go back a few years, you know, the DC Icons line started off slow, started picking up a little bit of momentum. The biggest complaint with that line was it was a little bit underscaled for a 6-inch line. So people were like, because if anybody, perfect example, if you're familiar with SH Figure Arts and Mafex, they're both 6-inch scale figures, but Mafex tends to scale a little bit bigger than Figure Arts, okay? Fine. That was just, all they needed to do was tweak the line. Scale the figures a little bit bigger, but still keep it in that 6-inch scale. No, they completely canceled the line. Nobody saw it coming. Really, nobody did, because they had released all these characters that they were going to be making in the Icons line. They completely canceled the line and went to Essentials, which was a completely different scale with less accessories and terrible ankle joints. That these figures just, they don't stand well on their own. And if you do any kind of posing with them, and anybody who has knows what I'm talking about, they're garbage. They're garbage. They can't stand up on their own.
Some of the things I read online too was like they were saying that the DC Essential figures could not compare to what McFarlane was doing. That was a quote. That was one of the things I read in one of the articles, was that was part of the problem with the figures there, that you got less as far as like accessories and stuff like that. And they said you were lucky if you would even get one, and the price was higher. And not only was that the case, but the figures were much more difficult to find because they would be more in like specialty stores and stuff. Whereas a company like McFarlane, they're cheaper, more accessories, and you can find them everywhere. Walmart, Target, online. So,
Online.
yeah. So they said that was one of the things that kind of hurt them a little bit too, was the fact that those things right there, where a company like McFarlane is able to do it for cheaper with more accessories, and you can find it in your general big box stores and online, whereas the essentials line couldn't.
Or they tell the truth and say that their essentials line was crap because McFarlane's a much smaller company. Come on, like that was pretty much Warner Brothers in-house, their in-house company for manufacturing collectible goods and figures and statues. That's your baby. You should be leading the way. And they've been all over the place with their merchandise, especially with the figures. I can't speak to the statues because I'm not a big statue guy. But their figures, why do you pull the plug on that? Like, people were saying they didn't like the Icons line. They just said they scale a little bit small. All you needed to do was tweak. All you needed to do was tweak the line. And this is something that I do like Marvel, but it's DC first. So I can say this. It does hurt a little bit. It does sting a little bit. But they have failed at every level. This company has failed and let its fan base down at every level. And it's not with just their in-house stuff. Mattel held on to a license way longer than they should have. McFarlane's made more adjustments in 6 months than Mattel made in over a decade. They didn't listen to anybody. McFarlane's a much smaller company than Mattel, sure as hell Mattel, and Warner Brothers Media. So don't say that they can't, not you, I know that's what they said. That's their excuse. You can't compete with McFarlane, or you just don't want to, you just don't want to do it because you guys have been they've been very indecisive with their products. People didn't want you to go away from the Icons line. They wanted you to tweak the scale. You completely cut the line off. And this is something that they failed at every level. It's for true DC fans, and I am a true DC fan, but I do like Marvel. There are people out there that it's DC and that's all they bleed. But you have to come to the table, you have to put your nutsack on the table and say, they have failed at every level. And it's painful to watch. They're doing it now.
Now the thing is, since we're talking about the action figure and statue line, now the questions that come to my mind is, what's going to happen with the rest of it? I mean, I personally didn't find much on that, but you actually did find a couple things that we had talked about prior to recording about a potential of what they might do going forward with their action figures and maybe even statues. Because, I mean, I find there's no way they're just going to not have anything out there besides McFarlane. It's just not going to happen.
So here's some of the things. This was Jim Lee, the DC Collectibles of DC Direct, DC, their chief creative officer. He's their chief creative officer for DC Collectibles, DC Direct, whatever you want to call them, says that they want to shift to a higher price point. Quote, Jim Lee clarified that from the consumer's perspective, there should be little change, certainly none in regards to quality. Bull. And they would probably shift to a higher price point and more of a licensing model working with manufacturers they already do work with. So that's an interview that he did about 9 to 10 hours ago. Okay.
So that's pretty recent then. That's really recent. Yeah.
And then you read stuff like the manufacturing, Bleeding Cool could be offering up DC Collectibles license probably to Hasbro or Mattel. Future license. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the stuff that they were doing in-house could potentially, some of those lines could go to McFarlane or Hasbro or Mattel? I don't think it's going to go to McFarlane because he's already got the multiverse line and he's not a company. But the Hasbro thing, they have Star Wars, G.I. Joe's back on the stage now. They have Marvel. They have Power Rangers. They already have a lot on their plate. I don't see that. But here's the thing that really pisses me off. Mattel, really?
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
So this goes exactly to the point that I just finished making. They have not learned. They're not listening to their fan base. Why would you even give Mattel another crack at this? They've had the license for a long time. They had distribution problems. They never listened to the consumer. They couldn't give a crap. They were so inconsistent with their product.
Right.
The fact that you would even consider them again for some of your in-house future lines, if that's what that means, what are you doing? You're not listening. You haven't learned anything.
Now the thing is with that, I'm wondering if Mattel's big problem back, because once again I didn't get the Mattel DC stuff. I was not into that stuff at all, and I'm wondering if Mattel's problem back then, because you say they don't listen, they weren't listening, and I'm wondering if it was one of those things where they were trying to make a toy for kids, but also try to appease collectors, but by not making separate figures and not spending more money. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they were trying to make both parties buy one toy and be like, hopefully this is good enough for both members to work with, instead of just making kids version and collector's version. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I understand that. They had the master license, and when they took the master license, they knew that that's what they had to do because Hasbro does it. They do it with the Legends. The Legends line is for the collectors, and then you have the $10 figures, which is less articulation, less skull, and that's geared more for kids. Quite frankly, that's a valid point that you could be making. I don't think that that's what it was at all, because the multiverse line was always geared more towards the collector. And after handling these figures over the years, I wouldn't give these to my kids because they wouldn't last more than 5 minutes. Right. That's how poor the quality is on some of these figures. They don't look, some of them, the look is not bad, but the feel, these figures wouldn't last if kids played with them.
Right. So, yeah, that's why I was bringing that up. I didn't know if maybe they were just trying to cut corners, and instead of making two separate ones, they were just trying to make it as one. But then again, if they were doing that, then if it's going to be targeted towards kids as well, they have to cut a lot of the collector stuff out to make it last and durable for kids, which then upsets the collectors. So if that wasn't a mentality, it didn't work, and it wasn't gonna work. Now the thing is, what you have mentioned, that at least gives some form of hope to the action figure line. I'm wondering what's going to happen with the statues, because I kind of like some of their black and white series statues and stuff like that. And what's happening there? Are they going to go to another company that's going to make them? Are they still going to produce those? What do you think?
They potentially could. They could go to any company they want that makes statues. They could do Sideshow. They could branch it off to a bunch of different companies. But who knows? And that's the thing with Warner Brothers and AT&T. I don't know how long ago they merged. I think it was like a few years ago. But they've been so inconsistent and all over the place with their decision making. Like, again, to bring it up again, and I'm not even talking about Mattel. They finally took the license away from Mattel, and a lot of people were upset. We mentioned it in our second episode at McFarlane, wrongfully so, because the scale wasn't his choosing. Again, because they didn't give him the master license. They did it split. They gave McFarlane the multiverse line, and then everything else to Spin Master. Again, another stupid decision. They have failed at every turn. It's like they're not learning from their mistakes. You gave it to Mattel. They held on way longer than they should have. You finally took it away from them, and then it's almost like they tried setting up McFarlane to fail because he was a small company, but boy, were they wrong.
Yeah.
He's kicking butt and taking names later in only 6 months.
Right. And unfortunately, who ends up paying for it? The 800 or so people that got laid off. They're the ones that end up, unfortunately, paying for that.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and the thing is, there was rumors going around that they were even looking to sell their video game branch or video game department, whatever you want to call it. And then recently, I guess the owner or one of the VPs or whatever he is to WB said no, they want to keep that. And it's kind of clear to see why, because if you think about it, if they're trying to push this whole digital only future, video games can easily be digital only. You don't have to make physical copies of games. And the video games, at least the ones that that I played with the Batman, the Arkham series and all that, they were fantastic. They got great reviews and everything. They were great games. So
Mhm.
what I'm hearing, they're doing what we just discussed with like the action figures and the statues. They're closing down their branch. They're going to look elsewhere to get that stuff done, and they're also with the comic books. I guess from what I've heard and read, they want to make it where only mainly graphic novels are going to be found in stores, like bookstores and comic book stores, and they want to try to push to have the single issues more of a digital only type of thing. And there's even rumors that they're I guess they tried launching a streaming service with like I don't know if it was their comic books or maybe it was their like shows or whatever, but they tried launching a streaming service, and I guess it didn't do so good. And them, HBO Max also didn't do so good when it launched. So I guess they're trying to combine those two together. And there's even rumors that there might potentially be a like a package deal where if you get like HBO Max, you can also get like whatever DC is going to offer for their comic books as like an add-on subscription type of thing. Because everyone's just going ape crap over this subscription service, digital only stuff. Ever since Netflix, everybody's doing it now. And
Yeah.
you know, if it works, good for you. But I mean, how many subscription services do we really need? It's to the point where every single company wants it. And
Mhm.
I get it. You want a piece of the pie and whatnot. I understand. But you got to also be careful. Like, digital is great, but there are a lot of people that do want physical. I like holding a comic book in my hand. You know, I like holding a game in my hand or a book in my hand. That's just me, though. You know, some people don't feel the same way.
Yeah, and from what and to touch on what you just mentioned, is a part of it that I wrote down notes that targets the AT&T thing. That whole streaming service, that's pretty much what AT&T is pretty much doing is. They're not happy with Warner Brothers. They're not happy with the DC brand, with the way things are going, and they're making cuts and they're making a lot of waves. Maybe they should look in the mirror because they lost a lawsuit because of overcharging customers, and they had to pay a lot of those people back. So look in the mirror before you start judging everybody. Fix the problem without hurting so many people, and this could have been avoided. AT&T obviously is going to move shows to HBO Max and the CW, so expect to see the DC universe to close and fold into HBO Max because AT&T wants one giant streaming service instead of separate services. And DC Universe was aimed at a small segment. So again, not surprising that this is going this route. Touching on what you just said, they want one giant streaming service.
Yeah,
But that's AT&T. From the article that I read, AT&T is making a lot of these calls.
right. I'm actually glad you said it because that's what I was just about to say too. Is that it was CW and HBO Max that
Mhm.
they're pushing the product. Now the thing is, excuse me, with a company like that, okay, and I'm not talking so much about Warner Brothers. I'm talking more about DC. Now, I understand some people will debate comics are not what they used to be. They're not as popular. They're not as profitable, and I can understand that. Now, the thing is, one point that I want to bring up is that, like, let's just jump into the next media section, okay? We talked about the action figures. We talked about the statues. We're talking now. Let's talk a little bit about the movies or TV shows, okay? Now, like I just said, the video game franchise, they are going to keep them. Now, if you guys remember, before the Arkham series, they didn't have much luck with their DC games either. Their DC games were not very good.
Nope.
And, you know, now they're finally starting to show some promise and stuff. And their movies are kind of in that same pattern, it seems. Like, it's very weird how it works. Like, if you remember Batman on the NES, I personally liked it, and a lot of people liked it. It was a good game. Just like Batman 1989, Michael Keaton Batman, very good movie. The first Superman movie was pretty good. I liked it. A lot of people liked it. It was a good movie. Then as the movies continued and the games continued, it seems like they just kept getting worse, and they didn't care. They just kept pushing this trash out on people, especially the games, man. The games were getting horrible. Then finally, you had a company come. I believe it was Rocksteady that picked them up, and just started bringing some life into the company, into the Batman series alone, which then started to show some promise in the games, showing that people do care about these characters. People do care and want good games. Now, the movies also started kind of going the same direction with, once again, you had the Christian Bale Batmans. That trilogy, it was fantastic. It was a really good trilogy. And that was probably one of the only times you can say that all three movies were really good. Whereas most movies start up here and then come down, you know? And my point of bringing up the movies is one thing I kind of looked up, and this was just a quick search, so I could be off a little bit. Don't quote me, fans go crazy. But one thing I did notice was that with the movie titles, if you take DC's movie titles, there is, and you look through them, and I'm not talking about animated movies, I'm talking about just strictly live action movies. There is a ton of Superman and Batman, a ton of them. Outside of those characters, you only have 13 other characters that starred in their own movies. And out of those 13, most of them were only one-shot movies. They gave them one chance, maybe two, and that was it. That was where their line goes. And this is going back to 1951 when they started making Superman movies. And they had movies. It's not like they made only like 10 movies. There was 51, 54, 66, 78, 80, 82, and so on. And they just, every like 2 or 3 years, there was a movie. So it's not like they didn't have opportunities. And some of you may say, oh, well, those movies bombed. Okay, well, I mean, wasn't there Marvel movies back then that bombed too, that weren't so great? And they kept pushing, because now when you go into the Marvel side, they have 22 characters that have their own movies, okay, 22 of them. And for them, their numbers are completely different. You have guys like the Hulk with 3 movies, Spider-Man with 8 movies, X-Men with 11 movies, the Captain America has 2 or 3 movies, Guardians of the Galaxy with 2, Ant-Man 2. Every guy has 2 or more. And it seems like, Punisher had 3, Elektra had only 1, Daredevil had only 1. And I'm not talking about whether they were good or not. I don't care about that. It's the fact that Marvel seemed to try to push more and say, you know what, we're going to try again. And we're going to try again. And that's why these guys have, for the most part, 2 or more movies each character. Now, obviously, certain characters are more popular. Spider-Man had 8, X-Men had 11, just like Batman and Superman. I understand that. But you can't tell me Ant-Man with 2. Ant-Man has 2 movies. Why does Aquaman have 1? Why does The Flash not even have 1 yet? You're telling me that Ant-Man's more popular than The Flash? I'm not a big Flash guy, but I mean, I'm also not a big Ant-Man guy either. And not to bash on Ant-Man, I'm just saying, like, they're trying more things. Now, if you look at the TV shows, that's where DC really went. They for whatever reason, fell in love with CW. They had 10 seasons of Smallville, which did great. You have, 6 or 7 seasons of Flash, 8 seasons of Arrow. So they really went the TV route. Now, I want to ask you, personally, why do you think they went so heavy with TV with these other characters and not film? Like, why does Arrow have 8 seasons, but Green Arrow doesn't even have his own movie? Is it because they just didn't have faith in their own characters, or what's the deal? What do you think?
Failure at every level. Plain and simple.
Back to the original point, yeah.
Failure at every level. It keeps coming back to that. Because here's the difference. The people in charge of Marvel, which now is Disney owns them, but still, even before Disney bought them out and owns them now, whatever, they understood one thing. Not everybody reads comic books. We need to grow and promote our brand. So maybe if we do a good job at the box office, we can grow our brand, promote other characters that people normally would know about if they don't read comic books. So that's something that Marvel understood and got a jump on in the 90s and just kept pushing it. DC did the same thing with their films that they did with their figure lines. They just couldn't deal with a slow start. And, let's try something different, but let's keep doing this. Let's keep growing this. Let's keep promoting our brands. Because there's no question in anybody's mind, as a Batman fan first, above all, I can't complain because you had the 2 Tim Burton Batman movies. Then you had the Dark Knight trilogy, which were 3 great movies. BVS was another good movie, in my opinion. Not everybody feels that way, but in my opinion, I think it was a good to a very good movie. Justice League is a different story for a different day. But again, failure at every level to understand promoting your brand, growing your brand, okay? Because here's the thing, and it's something that you can't deny. Recently, they finally started to get that, probably a little bit too little too late. Aquaman. How many people talked about Aquaman 15 years ago? I'm pretty sure there was a lot of people out there that do love Aquaman and are big Aquaman fans. The ones that really, truly read comic books. But the ones that really don't read comic books that much really didn't pay too much attention to Aquaman. It was Batman, Superman, and maybe Wonder Woman because of the TV show in the 80s. So Marvel understood that, DC didn't. Aquaman, Jason Momoa comes out on the big screen, is in Justice League, then is in, and then obviously has his own standalone film, and now a bunch of people like Aquaman that normally wouldn't have paid attention to Aquaman. So I just think that it's been a failure at every level. They're late to the game. They keep trying to rush, trying to catch up with Marvel, when in reality, just focus on your brand and putting something out that makes your fan base happy. And quite frankly, the TV shows, to be honest with you, they've been on, like the CW. Have you seen the ratings on these shows? Not very good.
What, lately you mean?
For CW standards, it might be good. But when you look at on other networks, some of those shows, the ratings are they don't even get 1 million views. So, views, what am I talking about? Ratings. Like, they don't even average, they're like 800,000.
Yeah.
Like on another network, those shows would have been canceled halfway through the season. They would have let the first season play out, and then it would have been canceled at the end of the season. So I don't know how much success they've had in the TV shows, maybe because it's on the CW. It's just overall, to sum it up, failure at every single level.
But here's the thing with the TV shows, like a lot of those shows are also on like Netflix. And that is different. You know what I mean? Like people like myself who don't have the time to watch it live every single week. I can't. I watch my shows on things like Netflix. So that obviously doesn't help their ratings on their
CW.
Yeah. But what it is, there's a lot of people like me, I'm sure, that watch it on Netflix or maybe watch it like on DVR or something like that. You know what I mean? So that could potentially hurt those numbers too, of course.
It does.
Yeah, so that's one thing to take into consideration, especially with today's standards, with how everybody has that luxury of being able to watch what you want when you want. Those numbers, I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna even pretend. I don't know how the other shows are on CW, but obviously they're doing all right. If they're on seasons like 8, 7, 6, you know what I mean? They're obviously doing okay, and they're even doing more shows. Now the thing is with me, the way I look at it, it's almost like they don't want to. I don't know if it's Warner Brothers or if it's DC. I don't know who it is, but it's almost like they don't have the patience for it. Like they're like, you know what? Batman's big, Superman's big. Let's just keep doing these guys. We're gonna, release 30 different versions of Batman action figures, 30 different versions of Superman, and you know what? We'll throw a Flash in there just to kind of appease the fans. And it's the same thing with their movies and shows. The shows, if you look, they kind of went a different direction. They took guys like Arrow. Green Arrow and Flash. Even Batwoman now has her own show. Supergirl. They're giving them their own shows, and these are different characters. No Batman, no Superman. Granted, yes, there was Smallville, which, to its credit, was before Superman. It was him as Clark growing up, so it was a little bit different. And then you have Gotham, that was also on, I think that was on Fox, right?
Right.
Fox. And that was Bruce Wayne younger, so they focused more on the detectives. So they took different turns with those guys, but those were not the only shows. Like I just mentioned 3 or 4 other characters. And with me personally, okay, I'm telling you right now, growing up, I did not care for Flash, I did not care for Aquaman, I did not care for, Green Arrow. I didn't care for these characters. And part of the reason why was because growing up, I already grew up in the era where there was the Batman movies and there was the Superman movies and some of the other movies. And guess what? Those were the characters I liked. Those were the characters I started to go towards, and it was because of those movies and the merchandise that came along with it. Now you go into a store, you will find Thor. which was another character I never cared about. Or
Right.
you will see Flash, and you will see, I'm trying to think of some other, Daredevil, another one I didn't care about. But because of the Netflix show that they had, I thought was amazing. I actually kind of like Daredevil now. So this is kind of proving your point where the live action stuff will generate more fans. Because
Yep.
I just gave you a perfect example of the characters that I cared nothing about. But thanks to good shows and movies, or at least in my opinion they were good, I now kind of like those characters. And I'm interested to read issues and comics of these other characters that I never cared about before. And Marvel seems to understand that more, and they're pushing it more. And I think part of it too is because they recently got the rights of those characters back from companies like Fox and I think Sony, and they kind of want to almost like erase some of the stuff that they did. Because once again, we're not talking about movies being good. That's not what we're talking about here. That's all up to debate. That's all everyone's opinion. What, like Fantastic Four, whether you like those movies or not, that's not the point. The point is that these companies are trying with these movies. Okay, some people hated the Fantastic Four movies. Me personally, I thought they were all right. I thought they were fine. But if you love the comics and stuff, you hated them. So now Marvel's taking over eventually, and they want to try to do something with those characters. That's what we're talking about, is that the companies are trying. Whereas with
Right.
DC, you can find a ton of Batman, a ton of Superman, not so much of the other guys.
Yeah. And it's proof right there. Like when they put Aquaman on the big screen, look at the explosion for Aquaman merchandise.
Yep.
So that's proof right there. You're just late to the party. You have to pay attention to what your competitors are doing. And if you're trying to race and trying to catch up, stop trying to catch up because you're already behind, first of all. Second of all, just focus on put out a good product, especially at the box office, because you know that your comic book sales are struggling. They're not what they once were. They're going digital, whatever the excuse is.
Right.
That's another way that you can fix that area is at the box office. Entice people who normally wouldn't read a comic book after watching that movie to want to go get a comic book. So this is what I mean about failing at every level. They have failed at every level. They've let down their fan base really, really bad. And I'm looking at some of these things that they want to do. That AT&T would most likely be interested in selling the DC brand. And who's one of the ones that are front runners? Marvel. Now, here's the thing with that. If AT&T and Warner Brothers aren't going to fix this, if they're not going to take this serious, if they're going to just keep half-assing everything, they're doing a disservice to the DC fans. Right. And at that point, I would say, you know what? Sell the rights of the brand to Marvel, because at least they know what the hell they're doing. And they'll do DC fans who love these characters, they'll do them some service and give them a great product, because I would have no reason to believe, after watching what Marvel's done the last 25 years, that they wouldn't do the same with Batman, Superman, Aquaman, whatever characters they want to put on the big screen. They would take their time and make sure, because they understand that you have to grow your brand. Once you do that, it'll increase sales in all branches. People that normally wouldn't read comic books might be enticed to go read an Aquaman comic book, a Flash comic book that wouldn't normally. Look, let's face it, everybody knows about Batman and Superman, okay? Everybody, those are when you think of DC, those are the first two characters that most people, I'm not going to speak for people who are diehard Aquaman fans. I'm not trying to offend anybody like that. But it's just a fact. When you think of DC, it's Batman and Superman, okay? And you can arguably say Wonder Woman comes right after that because of the show. And then, so again, they were late to the party, man. And it's really sad because of that. All these people are losing their jobs. There's a lot of confusion. It depends on what you read and what day you read it on. They don't know whether they even want to just sell the rights to the brand altogether, or whether they want to restructure the company or not. Whatever they do, think about not just the money, because obviously you're not doing good in that department either. Right. But think about your fan base. If you don't take care of the people that are paying you for your brand, you ain't going to make money. And if you're not going to give a crap, then maybe you should sell to somebody else that does care about the fan base.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like I know, like I actually yesterday, I believe it was. Yeah, yesterday, me and my son watched Aquaman. My son's going to be 8 soon, and he knew nothing about Aquaman, just like I did. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really know Aquaman at all either. After the movie was done, my son was running around saying he's Aquaman, and he was jumping around, and he thought he was the coolest character ever. That is right there, just a small sample of what we're talking about. Is the fact that you take a young kid who knows nothing about a character, you show him a cool movie, and now he's interested in that character. So if comics were to completely die out, what would have happened to a character like Aquaman or Flash or Cyborg who doesn't even have movies yet? Do they just disappear? Oh, well, we forget about these characters now. Now they're gone forever because we just didn't invest time into trying to build up a story or trying to make a movie that would somewhat justify these characters. You know what I mean? And I think, and I look at that, and I would say, there's no excuse for that. I mean, certain characters, I can understand why you wouldn't give them their own movie. I get it. Maybe they're just not strong enough, or it just wouldn't be appealing enough. I understand. But first of all, it doesn't hurt to try. And then second of all, you got some of these characters that, yeah, they might not be as big as like a Batman or a Superman, but they gotta be somewhat close, man. They gotta be. I'm not a huge DC guy, but I can't imagine that guys like Flash and Aquaman, Wonder Woman, whatever, it took them this long to finally get a green light for a movie. I mean, Wonder Woman, didn't she just release the second one? Didn't they just make the second one recently for Wonder Woman?
I don't think I don't think it's been released yet. I think it's
Hasn't been
out.
released yet. I honestly don't remember. Huh?
I don't know if it's. I think it's Wonder Woman 1984 or something like that, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, you're right. You're right. But either way, the first one did good enough to where they're releasing a second one. The Aquaman, the first one did good enough. They're planning on doing a second one eventually. And it's like, people want to see these. Why'd you wait so long? What happened? Like I mean, and the weird thing is too is that they not bashing movies like they did like Constantine, which I actually kind of like. I might be the minority in that, but I didn't mind it. They did Constantine, you did Watchmen, Jonah Hex, which that's fine, but you didn't do Flash, you didn't do Aquaman, you didn't do Cyborg, like you didn't do those Wonder Woman at those times. So you were in a meeting and you decided, hey, you know what we really need? We need a movie based on Constantine. We need a movie based on Jonah Hex, and we need another movie. What was the other guy I said? I already forgot. Jonah Hex, Constantine, and Watchmen. We need those movies. We don't need the Flash yet. We don't need Aquaman yet, which are members of the Justice League, which are big characters too. We don't need those guys yet. But we need Constantine and Watchmen, which once again, not bashing the movies. I personally like them, but come on, man. Like it takes this long to release those characters. Come on.
Those are good. I'm not, and again, I'm not going to bash those movies either. But it would have made sense to sprinkle those in between the main characters in your Justice League.
Right.
Again, failure to understand how the market works. And I'm not trying to say that I'm an expert, but the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. Look at Wonder Woman. Came out, I think, in 2016, I believe. I'm not sure.
I think you're right.
Okay. She was already probably the third biggest character in a lot of people's opinions. And she was badass in that movie. She was badass in BVS. She was badass in Justice League. Then they gave her a standalone movie. She was badass in that movie. Aquaman, same thing.
Yeah.
They went from nobody really caring about Aquaman. Now everybody, like even people that are Marvel fans on YouTube, I watch them review Aquaman figures from the movies, Jason Momoa, and they love the figures. You think they would have bought figures 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
5 years ago? Probably not. So again, it's failure to understand how it works. The comic book, not everybody is reading comic books. Even back in the day when they were popular, not everybody read them. But especially when you got into the middle to late 90s and 2000s, Marvel understood something and saw something that DC didn't. And that is, we need to grow our brand outside of just the comic book industry.
Right.
Okay? We need to grow our brand on the box, at the box office, on the screen. So that way, the casual fan that normally wouldn't know about these characters goes and watches the movie, and even if it doesn't pique them to go read a comic book, which a lot of them end up doing, but they like to go out and buy the merchandise from those characters based on those movies.
Right.
So either way, you're making money on both ends if you do it right and you take the time and make a good movie like Justice League. There was no need for that movie to be rushed. None at all. Now they're re-releasing the Snyder Cut. What are you guys doing? Like, why didn't you just do that from the beginning?
Right. Right. It like I said, to me, it gives me that same feeling that it was just easier to go with the established characters already. You know what I mean? They knew that Batman was already big thanks to Tim Burton's movies, the first two movies, and even Adam West back when they had the TV show. So
Right.
same thing with Superman. You had the first few movies, and you had there was a show I believe back in like the '60s, I think, right, or '50s. It was an old show.
Something like that. Christopher Reeve actually, I think, had like 4 movies, I think.
Yeah, no, he did. He had 4. But the thing is, from my personal experience, and even from what I've heard other people when they talk about the movies, it was one of those things where it got worse. You know what I mean? First one was good, second one, and then so on and so forth.
Yep.
It was almost like either they didn't want to risk putting money into something else that might fail, so they just kept pumping it into the same thing that was already established, or it was just laziness, and they just knew, hey man, people are going to watch this, and we already kind of have an idea of how this works, so let's just keep doing this again, and
they were clearly wrong because Aquaman proves them wrong, Wonder Woman proves them wrong, and even some of those smaller characters on the CW that you just mentioned proves it wrong. I think it was just laziness and just look at what they've done in other areas. They just give up too easily. It's like, the Icons line is not making the money that we wanted it to make. So, and instead of listening to the people saying, hey, look, we like this line, just scale it a little bit bigger. And then tweaking the line, and that line could have exploded. A lot of people were upset that they canceled the line. Okay, so again, they didn't listen to the DC universe, to the DC fan base. They really didn't, and it's unfortunate. And because of that, people are losing their jobs, and potentially more could come. So it's a sad, unfortunate situation that I'm not completely surprised that it's happening. I just was surprised at the scale of how quickly, like 600 to 800 people like that.
Yeah.
Shame on you, AT&T, and shame on you, Warner Brothers. Seriously, it didn't need to be like this.
Yeah, I know. They did it all in like one day. It was an absolute bloodbath.
Yeah.
Some
of the articles worded it that way.
Yeah.
An absolute bloodbath.
Yeah, did these people have heads up? Like, were they like, hey, we're going to be downsizing in like a couple weeks, so maybe look for other jobs? Or was it just one of those things like, we're going to have an auditorium full of people and be like, this half of the room, you are fired. You know what I mean? Like, lay off that many people?
Who knows? Who knows what they did? But either way, regardless of how they did it, even if they did it not like lining people up, regardless of how they did it, it was unnecessary. It didn't need to go. They have enough meat on the bone. All they had to do is just know what to do with the meat. They didn't know what to do with it, and it's really unfortunate, dude. It really is. I don't know.
I don't know either. Just hopefully best of luck to those people, especially during this time with a pandemic going on. Hope to God they can find some work. But that's what's scary too. It's not like there's work everywhere right now. So best of luck to those people. And then as far as us as fans and collectors, we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of rumors right now because it just happened. I mean, I'm with you. I hope that a company that's gonna really cherish these characters and give them respect and hopefully just give them the time of day. At the very least, just try. That's all we're asking is, you do a movie, give it a shot. Instead of rebooting the same thing over and over and over again, let's try some new characters. Let's try some other stuff. There's plenty of characters out there. There's no reason to not try.
They still keep making the Batman movies because they can do like dark. There's a lot of comics out there for different versions, like Batman Beyond, which I heard that they were thinking about doing that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can still do with Batman. There's still a lot of stuff they haven't even touched. But at the same time, understand that you have other characters that people, if they knew about, might actually like. So it's growing your brand, advertising your brand on the big screen, not just counting on comic books. Because again, back then, not everybody read comic books. A lot more people did back then, but especially now when you're trying to go all digital because the physical sales aren't selling and people are just not doing it anymore. You had to do it on the big screen. And when you finally did it, it worked. It worked with Aquaman. It worked with Wonder Woman. It worked. It even worked with Flash. So I don't know. I just think that they were a little late to the party, and I just hope that if they're going to restructure the company, that they're going to do their fans some justice. How ironic, Justice League, get it?
Right.
Kind of funny, but I'm going to go with it right now because you gotta. I don't know. It just blows my mind that they've let it got this bad to the point where it's like, really, you're going to lay off all these people, and you still don't even know whether you want to keep the brand, restructure the company, which branches are going to be shut down, which branches are going to. I mean, the comic books, they might cut another 20 to 25%. That's a lot of people. That's a lot. And it doesn't need to go that route at all if you just had paid attention.
Yeah. And just so that way you guys know, there was a lot of people throughout all of WB that got laid off. We're just focusing on the DC line and the DC branch because us being collectors, that's what we know. That's what we love, and that's the topic we're talking about. But it's sad for everybody that got laid off throughout the entire company. You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about. And and the other thing too is I hope they do keep making Batman and Superman. Just continue sprinkling some of those other characters, give them their own film, give them their own respect. Because, like I said, me and my son now like Aquaman, think he's kind of cool, and we never cared for him before. I don't even know if my son even knew who he was.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But let us know in the comment section below. What do you guys think about what's going on?
Yeah.
How does this make you feel? Like, are you angry? Are you upset? Are you hopeful? Because there's still a lot of questions and not enough answers. We don't know what direction they're going to go. We're just going to have to see and wait and see what they end up doing. But let us know, how you guys are feeling about this, and
Absolutely. And if you haven't checked out our other videos, please do. Give us a like, and thank you guys very much for watching.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and share.
All right. Thank you guys. Take care.
Take care.